ปี้หาเธอคันนี้เธอคันนี้
In the second turn of events, Italy was thrown into chaos as a Versa storm wreaked havoc across the picture-square landscape of Sicily and Rome. The unrelated tempest, reminiscent of a scene of Dante's Inferno, left a trail of destruction in its wake, testing the resilience of these Italian people and their determination of republic their beloved cities. Sicily, now in the straddling Mediterranean coastal line and historic Kern, is almost hardest hit by violent tempest. The island, unusually a sure weather, were caught in the turbulent sea of fury, pouring the curse and related force. Torrential rain, accompanied by gale force wind, battered the region, caused widespread flooding, triggering landscape and uprooted centuries-old trees. In dramatic turn of events, Sicily finds itself those in unprecedented storm as nature unleashed any pure upon the picture-square Italian island, where burst of the exclusive coverage and mythological spectacle deletion the impact of communities, infrastructure and the environment. As the storm approached Sicily, among the clouds gathering hilding the tempest to unparalleled proportions. Coastal area forced to onslaught the fierce winds and torrential rains, leading to widespread flooding in challenging conditions to both residents to emergency service. Out on the ground reported paint a vivid picture to havoc wreaked by the storm. The city of Palermo was transformed into rivers and water levels served submerged cars and tested to resilience to fluidness. The historic architecture withstood the test time to the faces of relentless onslaught the wind prey. Throughout the island communities are grappled with the power outage and the storm force causing significant damage to electrical infrastructure. Emergency shelters have been opened to provide refuge to those displaced by the storm. Coastal town in rural village in Sicily have experienced some of the worst damage. The agriculture sector, which is crucial in the island economy, have been hit hard, with the fields and cars destroyed in the rising waters. Landslides have cut off aces of several mountains region, complicating rescue efforts. The situation of a minefield, with the emergency crew working around the clock to respond to new incident and then arise. Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern region of the country. Torrential downpour have caused rivers to swell, burst their banks and inundate towns and villages. The latest episode of flooding have left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with the thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po and the Agrio, have reached critical levels, forcing emergency service to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation have been compounded the landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads and insulated communities. powerful storm hit Sicily, plunging part of the Italian island into chaos as torrential rain, strong winds and flash floods swept through the gay skies, including Palermo, Catania and Messina. According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm dumped more than 120 mm of rain in just a few hours, nearly a month's worth, flooding streets, collapsing roads and prompting dozens of evacuations. Emergency service responded more than 300 calls using helicopters to board the rescue trapped residents. In Palermo, dramatic footage showed cars flooding like toys and shops in the historic center of flooding. Giulia Romana, a 42-year-old local resident, said, "It was terrible. The water rushed into our house in a matter of minutes. The barrier had time to move the upper floor. Schools were closing in affected regions, and hundreds of people were left without power due to power outage." Authority also reported temporarily closed to Catania airport. The rail runway were flooded, caused delays and cancellations. Meteorologists explained the extreme weather conditions as a mitigant to rare Mediterranean hurricane formed by high sea temperature and unstable air masses. Sicily Civil Protection Chief Fabio Cruiser warning about the increasingly unstable Mediterranean climate economy, warning from climatologists who said that the sea surface temperature, now about 27 Celsius, are contributed to the formation of more tropical cyclones now at the Mediterranean. Local media including Roberto Lagola of Palermo and Etnico Tragico of Catania have requested emergency funds of support from the national government. Cleanup efforts are ongoing with more than 1,400 civil protection volunteers and firefighters involved in the cleanup debris and drainage flooded areas. Environmental groups such as Bird and calls on Italy in the speed up infrastructure urged, especially in the southern cities prone on flooding. Experts from the University of the Palermo know that 16% of region drainage system and outdated or inundated from the today extreme weather conditions. As Sicily begin in a powerful recovery, the message is clear. Climate disasters are no longer a distant possibility. They are not happening now with the devastating consequences. Sicily, normally bridge collapsed, looks at the dew blow from the narrow fields and when green groups are now fast swept through the mud and the water. Environmental warning: in addition to human casualties, entire ecosystem have been temporarily destroyed. In the city of Noto, residents placed candles and the steps of historic cathedral in memory of the victims. Local presses helped open air masses in a flooded courtyard, calling the strength and the unity. One of the Syrians, Lucia Manso, said, "We lost our beginnings, but not each other. The most important things." Meanwhile, the Italian army remained the standby with more than 400 soldiers destroyed across the isolated to clear debris, reinforced river banks to deliver aid to remove vigilantes. The EU has also experienced its support. A team from the US Civil Protection Mechanism has been sent to coordinate with the Italian authority, increasing the livelihood of international funding to support long-term recovery. Scientists emphasize this is only a high bridge of may become normal. Southern Europe is especially by the Mediterranean basin is becoming increasingly vulnerable to extreme weather events and the climate change accelerators. After After the storm, Sicily emergency service remained overwhelmed. Over 315 emergency calls were recorded in 24 hours, and fire crews were sent to Serrate, Ragusa, and Argiriento to clear fallen trees, restore power lines, and evacuate flooded buildings. Farmer in rural area report catastrophic losses. Vineyard, olive grass, and retail, and citrus orange, where other vital civil economy were flooded. This storm destroyed a 12-year war. St. Antonio Rizal, the farmer near Trapani, were in despair. The island's fragile infrastructure suffered serious damage in the southern parts of the island. Bridge in the rural roads collapsing, cutting off Smile Mountains town. In Enna, several landslides blocked all access roads, forcing helicopters to deliver supplies. Rescue teams, including the military, have been deployed to assist with the worst-hit areas. Civil defendants until have set up temporary shelters in schools and community centers of displaced families, many of whom have lost everything. Environmental experts warn that such intense storms are becoming more frequent due to climate change. As the sun rose over the devastation streets, scenes of resilience began to emerge. Volunteers from neighboring towns arrived the shovels, pumps, and food supplies. In Catania University, standard formed human chain to help clear debris to home of elderly residents. Church bells rang in solidarity of many communities, helped nightly prayers to injure and displaced. One image of White Sicily flag flying proudly over the flood town hall became a national symbol of strength. Local media called at a room and declared a state of emergency to obtain additional funds in the rescue to rapid reconstruction. Engineers are now installing bridges and roads, help workers to warn into possible communication flow to overflows, seen and standing water. Meteorologists at Meteo Italia say a storm system may be weakening the residual rains and extended to continue for several more days. The ground is standing with the water. Warning climatologist Dr. Elena Ferraro events tell additional rainfall could cause new floods and landslides. Environmental activists are calling this storm a wake-up call. This is not just a random error, said Lucia Marinel of Climate Italia. This is the result of decades of neglecting environmental policy of urban planning. We must change now. International support has begun to arrive at the form of offer assistance from the European Union of neighboring countries. Italian celebrities, soccer players, and Pope have been experiencing this solidarity. As Sicily slowly begins to dry up, the real lesson of the storm is being recovered not only in blizzards but also in dialect and the growing average in the Mediterranean Sea. One of the candle as calm sea is sunny skies is becoming of the epicenter of the climate disaster. Experts call this a turning point to the arch southern European government is invest in the climate resilience. Coastal cities such as Palermo and Catania, densely populated, are reaching a culture heritage, particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels, increasing rainfall to heat waves. The Mediterranean Sea is warming 20% faster than the global average, said Dr. Elena Morandi, the climate researcher of University of Rome. This storm was not a fluke. This is part of the trend we are seeing more intense, more frequent, more destructive. International observers from UNESCO have experienced concerns about Sicily's historical monuments, many of which were flooded or damaged during this storm. The Baroque territories of Noto and ancient Greek ruins are still nude, and new parts of the parts surrounding Mount Etna were affected. Meanwhile, firefighters from all over Italy were sent to reinforce refuse force. Social media is flooded with images in dramatic rescue operations. Children begin lifted from rooftops, elderly people begin to carry out throughout the waist deep water, and pain being saved from the daunting. The hashtag Sicilia Scotta Aqua were become popular throughout the country. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed solidarity with the region, promising no community will be left without the help. We will rebuild our support every affected family. Experts warn that the Mediterranean region is becoming increasingly vulnerable to such storm. In a recent report by European Environmental Agency, Sicily was identified as a climate hotspot facing rising sea levels, heat waves, and now extreme rainfall. As the sky begins to clear, attention turned to recover. Damage assessment now ongoing to questions are being raised about the urban planning drainage system and early warning protocols. But for many Sicilians, healing will take no longer. As a Giuliano Manga, whose home was destroyed, it said with the tears here years. We survived but now lost everything. Now we have started all over again. Residents found themselves stranded in their homes waiting for rescue teams to arrive. The heat of Italy, Rome and entire city forced in all shared challenges at the Colosseum, an enduring symbol of Rome history, stood the silent weather the raging storm as a rain and wind threatening to erode an instant forecast. Trees turned into rivers and historic basins became waterlogged that caused extensive damage of city infrastructure. Italian authorities renovated today effective response to time of crisis point of action. Emergency service working tirelessly to rescue those trapped in the rising floodwaters and restore essential service helicopters. However, over-submerged areas airlifting residents to safety, though firefighters braved elements to reach those in need. Public transportation was severely disrupted, leaving passengers stranded. The coastal area faced to boost with a storm and strong wave crashing against the coastline, caused erosions to damage the sea definition. Emergency services are working around the clock to help those in need. The Italian Red Cross has mobilized a team to support the most affected areas, offering shelters and distributing basic necessities. Refuse operations are ongoing, with the reports of people trapped in their homes due to rising water. Helicopters have been deployed to evacuate those to imminent danger. The impact of the storm on agriculture is also a growing concern. Sicily knows the serious growth of vineyard forces potential devastation. Initial estimates suggest significant crops losers with a could have the long-term economic impact of the region farming communities. Italian Prime Minister Conte has experienced solidarity with the affected residents, pledging government aid to resources to support recovery efforts. He praised the resilience of the Sicilian people and terrorist forced rescues. Meteorologists predict severe weather conditions will continue over the next 24 hours and advise residents to remain vigilant. As Sicily struggles with the aftermath and the disaster of focus to ensure the safety of the residents is beginning to arduous task to rebuilding. The full extent of the damage will become clear in the coming days, but for now Sicily is widespread the storm relentless onslaught. Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern regions of the country. Torrential downpour have caused rivers to swell, boost their banks and inundate towns and villages. This latest episode of flooding has left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bread washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po the Angelo, have reached critical levels, forcing emergency service to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation has been compounded by landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads and isolated communities. In Venice, the city is too familiar to high water levels. Flood definitions were put the test. The iconic most barriers designed to protect the city with the rising tides were activated shelters to mitigate the Venice from the significant damage. However, other areas in the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to fare the higher ground. Experts warn that such events are becoming more frequent due to climate change, especially in the southern Europe. Palermo Major Robert Lalacalla called the government assistant, say this is no longer a seasonal storm. This is a climate emergency. We need to urgent investment in infrastructure and prevention. No casualties have been confirmed, but dozens of people have been received medical attention and injured in the shock. The Italian government has promised to assess the damage and provide funds to clean up in the coming days. Sicily is beginning in clean up the stormy stock, reminding of increasing unpredictability of nature in the face of global warming. In Messina, landslides blocked major highway, isolated several mountains villages. Farmers in Sicily reported several damage to crops, with the olive groves and a vineyard underwater. One of the local farmers, Antonio Bellini, said, "We have lost half of our harvest. We haven't seen rain like this in 40 years." Temporary shelters were established in community center and church for families who were forced to leave their homes. Volunteers are working around the clock to distribute food, blankets of our necessities. In Venice, a city all too familiar, and the high water level flood definitions were put on the test. The iconic most barriers designed to protect the crisis from the rising tide were activated, sheltered the Venice from significant damage. However, other areas of the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in the Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to higher ground. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency in several regions, mobilizing rescue workers to deploy to army to assist in evacuation efforts. Civil protection authorities have urged people to affected areas to remain cautious to offshore warning as more rain forecast in the coming days. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited in the affected areas, expressing her solidarity with the victims and pledging government support to reconfiguration efforts. This is national emergency, and we are working closely to local authority to ensure the safety for all residents, she said. Climate experts that such extreme weather events could become more frequent due to climate change. Italy, with the varied geography, particularly vulnerable to affected changing weather patterns. The combination of heavy rainfall, poor mountain infrastructure and urban expansion into flood-prone areas has exacerbated the impact of recent storms. A powerful storm hit Sicily. Italy caused severe weather conditions that resulted in widespread destruction across the island. The storm, characterized by heavy rain, gale force winds, led to widespread flooding, power outage, and extensive damage to infrastructure. Local authorities report that the crises of Catania and Palermo have been hit by hardest heat. In Catania, streets turned into rivers, and water level rose in 3 ruined heights. The historic city center, which usually turned to tourists, is now eerily quiet. Emergency service tried to cope with the field. Video shared on social media showed cars submerged and residents walking throughout the waist-deep water. The meteorological service has recorded widespread up to 100 km/h, which further agriculture to station. Trees have been uprooted, roofs have been ripped off buildings, and debris is scattered to roadway, making the travel dangerous. The regional government has issued a red alert, urged residents to stay at home and avoid unnecessary travel. In Palermo, the storm led to similar extent to chaos. In local airport was temporarily closed due to flooding of runway, leading to flight cancellation and delays.
Sembra che ci sia il fiume, un fiume che scorre.
This is not the first time Sicily was faced with the wrath of nature, but experts are calling this storm one of the most destructive weather events in decades. The last such disaster occurred in 2029, where deadly floods and landslides killed 37 people in Messina, but this time the combination of heavy rainfall, wind and widespread infrastructure damage made the consequences even more serious. According to preliminary government report, more than 1,200 homes were damaged, 14 roads remain closed, and 7 bridges have been structure damaged. Insurance companies are already inundated with the calls of many families without insurance to continue on compensation from the state. This storm was particularly dangerous because it suddens. Meteorologists issue a yellow alert just hours before the first downpour. By that time, it was too late many communities to prepare. Critics are now to call into fast weather warning system to better preparedness of natural disaster, especially in the southern region, which is often overlooking. Satellite images show in a grim picture. The human toll of storm is still being aced. At least 3 deaths have been confirmed so far, including the elderly man who drowned in flooding basement in Messina and young delivery driver who was swept away by flood waters in Catania. Dozens of people have been injured, many of them due to falling debris in traffic incidents on the road, middle-sized pillar or rain. Sicilian Governor Renata Sicily visited a flooded area on Tuesday, calling that the match helicopters and promised long-term support. We will not abandon our people. The recovery will be swift and complete, we promised during the press conference. Local volunteers arrived the affected areas, diverted flood and helping to clear debris. Social media is now filled not only image and destructive but also of solidarity. Neighbors stretch open shoulders and young groups organized donated drivers. School in several provinces remain closed to damage assessment continue. Psychologists have been sent to provide assistance to children and families affected by trauma, especially in the hardest hit community of Gela and Lixita. In the cat of the Mediterranean, the Italian island of Sicily has long been seasonally with a sun of detending coastline and seductive blend of the history and culture. However, this idyllic landscape is recently has been transformed into a dramatic scene of nature fury. A formidable storm marked by resounding rain and fierce winds and lashed Sicily, unveiling the vulnerable of even the most picturesque square of the region with the firms of weather. The storm onslaught was a shift with the meteorologists barely able to predict and intensify before the unleashed food and made the Apon of fury. Within hours, streets and town crises across the Sicily were inundated, transformed urban center into unwelcoming, water-loaded mazes. The rain, increasing unforgiving, pointed the wind portrayal of the region are decided by the elements. In Palermo, the Sicilian capital, scenes and the chaos unfolded. As scene streets and usually burst with the life and aroma of Sicily, crash while deserted save for a session of vehicles struggling against the rising water. The iconic Tragedmassimo, a testament of Sicily agriculture, dangerous stood with the silence within to unflooding calamity.